a dynamic and innovative corporate leader with a proven track record of successful establishing results-driven companies. Mark Prather has had 40 years of experience. He has bought and sold and started companies. He manages startup strategy planning, revenue growth, operations, marketing, and high-level negotiations, including forming a new corporation with his son. Mark recognizes that there was a demand for a company with a unique business system that offered both real estate and financing services to clients. He's actually authored 2 books, and I believe this is the third that you will be passing out. If people have good questions, we'll be passing those out. And in April 2017, Mark launched the Mark One Wealth Academy. The company is designed to educate loan officers, realtors, and consumers on wealth creation through the 7 principles of the science of building wealth. So please let me welcome Mark to the panel.
I have the greatest meme joke ever that you guys aren't going to see. So I'm going to have to come up with a new joke. So let me tell you a quick story. We're improvising here. This is a story about 2 best friends, Jose and Pedro. Now, Jose and Pedro love to camp. So they're out camping. Night comes. They get in their sleeping bags. They go to sleep. A few hours later, Jose wakes up. He looks around. He says, I don't believe this. Pushes Pedro. Pedro, wake up. Pedro wakes up and says, what? Jose says, look around. So I'm looking. He says, what do you see? He goes, well, I see millions of stars. He goes, and what does that tell you? So Jose thinks for a minute and he says, well, astrologically, it tells me that Sagittarius is nearing Libra. Meteorologically, it tells me that it's going to rain tomorrow. And theologically, it tells me that God is all powerful. Jose says, no, Bendejo, they stole our tent. Some of us are smarter than we think, right? All right, the 2 most important questions in life. And by the way, I want to tell you, I'm super excited to be here. So I'm going to warn Christine, I'm very excited to be here. When I get excited, I run over. All right? So, yeah, put me on the timer and raise a hand when I'm halfway done, all right? Okay, so I stay on track. So, because, I just want to respect everyone's time. But tell you, I'm super excited to be here. This opportunity, I'm going to share with you the most powerful and compelling things I've learned in my life. And I hope that you'll be able to connect with them. First, the 2 most important questions in life. Number 1, does God exist? Now, if God exists, then everything we do matters. But if God doesn't exist, then nothing we do matters. Does that make sense? Number 2, what is possible for your life? My family, we went to church once when I was about 14 or 15, and that was because it was financially beneficial to my father that we went to church with this particular family. We didn't have any religion in our house. I didn't start going to church until a cute girl, when I was a senior in high school, asked me to go. When I graduated from high school is when I started asking the question, does God exist? And I started going to a couple different Christian churches with some friends. And the question that came up is, I've been very ambitious my whole adult life, basically from about the time I was 17. I remember when this light bulb went on over my head saying, I'm going to be out of school here pretty quick, and what do I do next? Now, the natural thing is to think college. I graduated from high school early, went to college for 1 semester, and said, hey, I can't do this for 4 more years. I need to be rich by the time I'm 25. And I went and got my real estate license, got in the real estate industry. But the question that I kept asking is, what is possible for me in my life? So I want to ask you right now, how many of you here wonder that question? How many of you think about what is possible for you in your life? Raise your hand if you can relate to that. See, to me, that's the right question. That's the question. Don't you want to know the answer to that question? I wanted to know the answer. And here's what occurred to me as I started getting into the Bible. How could I prove that God absolutely positively exists? And how could I find out what was absolutely possible in my life? And I read the Sermon on the Mount. Now, the Sermon on the Mount says, ask and ye shall receive. But it also goes on to say, and seek and ye shall find, right? So here's what I realized. Either that's true or it's a lie. And if I was 85 and on my deathbed, and it took me that long to know that God didn't exist, then I would die a happy man, because I would know that I proved absolutely positively that God didn't exist and what was possible for my life. And so I started that journey. Now, what is possible in your life will be ultimately determined by 2 factors. Number one, what you believe. Now, I'm not talking just about what you believe about God or no God. But let's give you an example about politics. What people believe on the left and what people believe on the right. What's amazing is how powerfully attached we are to what we believe, and when very often what we believe is tied to so little information. When you think about what percentage of all of man's knowledge do you currently have in your brain? Of all the knowledge of the world that's ever been and that exists, what percentage do you believe you have in your mind? I would guess it's a small percentage. And yet, your beliefs about all kinds of things, politics and many other things, are so deeply ingrained that you are immovable. And number 2 is the strength of your faith. Now, the book I wrote, Why the Rich Stay Rich and the Poor Stay Poor, I titled it that because here's what I've learned. I come from a family of no education and no income to speak of. My father dropped out of school in 7th grade. My mother dropped out of school in high school. The dream in our family, I have 14 aunts and uncles, and not one had a high school diploma. My father was the only one that could read and write. When I look at that environment, trying to grow up in that environment, what I learned is how many of the people gave up before they got started because they didn't believe they could advance their life. Do you know statistics show that 90% of the people never change their life circumstance? Poor stay poor, middle class stay middle class, rich stay rich. All for the same reason, what they believe. What we believe limits our lives, and it limits our faith. So I want to talk about what you believe about work. What you guys are doing with this young Capital Defense, to me, is so desperately needed. I'm going to share with you some pretty incredible statistics, but first I want to talk about what do you believe about work. Now, number one, do you believe when you go to work that that is a job that you have to have because you need that job and that job pays the bills? That's kind of the first level. What percentage of people you think are in that place? They only have that job for one reason. They need it financially. How many of you think it's more than half the people? Yeah, I would bet it's 80, 90%. But if you have that mindset and that belief that I only have this job because I have to. Now the next level is, what does it mean to serve? When you get up and go to work, do you get up and go to work with the idea that I'm going to serve people? And that serving is a great thing? Or is it the first? But here's the highest level. The highest level is what it means to sacrifice. Now, the definition of sacrificing is being willing to give something of yourself, that something you want, but you're willing to sacrifice that and give that up for another. Now, when you go to work, do you have a belief system that you're willing to sacrifice for others? Whether that's part of your team in the company, whether that's customers, or you're in the first category. See, what you believe about work is going to dictate everything, but it starts there. So let's talk about what is possible for your life through work. Now think about all the things that you dream about, the life that you imagine to be. How much of your dreams and aspirations are tied to your career, to your work? For a lot of us, it's a big part of it. Because if you have no income, pretty limiting. Now, what is possible with God? We've all been taught, good Catholics, what's possible with God? Yeah, all things are possible, right? Here's my point. When I ask what's possible with your life through work, what's possible with your career, and then I ask what is possible with God, we all know that all things are possible with God. But if all things are possible with God, then doesn't it stand to reason that all things are possible with your career? But how many people really believe that? Most people don't believe that. "90% of the people will never realize their full potential." Now, I read that book called The Strangest Secret. And he talked about that, those stats. I read that probably 30 years ago. I've lived that, I've seen that, and it's conservatively 90%. Now I want you to think about that, and this is why I'm really here today. Is what is possible for you in your life is so beyond what you will believe. But 90% of the people will never realize their life potential. And it's all for the same reason. It's their eyes. It's what they see. They cannot advance their life. They will not take the next step if they can't see where they're going to put their foot. Whether it's their career, their personal life, they will not take the next step. They either they're big time planners and they have to know the course, or they'll do the study, or they'll look around and say, who is doing this? Show me someone that's doing this as being successful at it. If I can't see someone else that's doing this as being hugely successful at it, then it clearly must not work. No one else has succeeded at it, so I'm not going to try. And that's why there's so few people like Steve Jobs, Jeff Bezos, and these kinds of things. Because was there anything like Amazon before Amazon? And we see it over and over and over. Your eyes are going to be your greatest limitation. Understand that be willing to take the steps. And in the Sermon on the Mount, when Jesus says, seek and ye shall find, what does that mean? Seek and ye shall find. Find means you don't know where it is, right? You got to look. You have to advance yourself in the darkness. And most of you are not able to do that. Now, I hope you don't think I'm being harsh on you, but I'm being harsh on you. All right. Here's why. I'm trying to wake you up, because I'm trying to take that 10% and at least double it to 20% of you. To wake up to the fact that don't limit your lives by your eyes, because I know that's what you want to do. You want to play it safe. you don't find out what's possible in your life playing it safe. Is God welcome at your employer? Now, how many of you here feel that God is welcome in your at your place of business? Raise your hand. I want to just get a pulse on this. So if you were to do like a prayer breakfast, if you were to go to your employer and say, hey, I'd like to send out an email to everybody and have a prayer breakfast meeting, you could do that, right? I mean, when you walk in my office, the first thing you see is a big picture of Jesus on the wall. We do prayer breakfasts on Friday mornings. Now, I don't make it mandatory. It's totally optional. But today's world, I don't know if you've seen this stat, but 40 years ago, 3% of the people considered themselves non-religious, had no religious affiliation. 30 years ago, it was 6%. Today, it's 25% of the total U.S. population, but for under 30, it's 40%. That's why this organization is so desperately needed. 40% of the people under 30 have no religious affiliation or belief in religion of any sort. And look at the epic increase in that. Living a godly life is especially important at work. Many of us have two lives. Your organization and bringing your careers and coming together. And to me, it's awesome, and I was so excited to be invited to come and meet young people that are trying to have faith in God in their careers and in their lives, because you're a dying breed, and we got to turn that around. So I'm going to share with you right now the most profound thing I've learned in my life. It's how to have a limitless life. See, what is possible for your life is so beyond what you believe. I don't care how grand you think your ideas are, your goals are. I thought I had some big ideas, some big goals. What is possible is so beyond that. And I'm going to share with you the formula. First, it starts with align your values with God's values. Now, what does God value? We want to think that God's really complicated. God's not complicated. God's really simple. God is about two things. Number one is having a loving relationship with you. I pray all day, every day. All day, every day. Now, it wasn't always that way. It was a process. God was kicking the crap out of me for about 30 years. But with pain, with a lot of pain, including a massive heart attack at age 49, being in critical condition for 10 days, being on the heart transplant list, and being at a really tough crossroads, I've learned that there's a lot of love and pain. My world got rocked over and over and over. But each time I learned and I adjusted. He just wants a loving relationship with you. And all you got to do is talk every day. Talk every day. The way you will feel and what you will learn and the direction that you will go is amazing. Number two is loving treatment of his children. So who are the children? All of us, right? All of us. So how loving are you toward others? When you go to work, are you caught in the world? I would bet most of you are caught in the world of climbing the corporate ladder, making more money. Your values shift to the worldly values and away from godly values. That doesn't work. Now, what is love? I'm going to share with you a little challenge. I want you to remember this question I'm about to ask you. Just sit down with friends and ask them to define love. I'm going to tell you, 95% of people don't know what love is. Don't know what it, can't define it. Ask them to define love. What most people, and this is the number one reason our world's so screwed up, they don't know what love is. They believe it's a feeling. Well, it's not a feeling. Let me tell you what love is. Love is the willingness to sacrifice for another. You know, all of us have been in relationships, you know, whether it could be a family, a friend, it could be, you know, a more romantic relationship where you're in a relationship and there is someone saying, I love you, but their actions don't mirror that, right? If someone's not willing to do anything for you, do they love you? Love is to sacrifice. And that's the key, is what are you willing to sacrifice? When you go to work, do you go with a mindset of you're willing to sacrifice of yourself for the people around you, for the customers that you work with? Do you make it about them and elevating their lives? Or is it about elevating your life? If you can align your values with God and stay centered on that, and it is not an easy thing to do, and move forward when you don't know how to move forward, you just keep moving, you'll end up in a place where I call it the Holy Spirit rocket ride. And I'm serious, and there's nothing better than being on the Holy Spirit rocket ride. Here's the way I look at my life now. I want you to picture this rocket. And there's a belt around it. And there's Mark holding on for dear life. And that rocket is just blasting. That is my life. And that rocket just says, Holy Spirit on the side. That is my life. Because here's what's happened in my life. Is through this transition of making it all about me to making it all about God, amazing things have happened over and over, and now I'm on a rocket ride like I've never imagined. We're at a place where we're helping thousands of people, that I see that growing into millions of people. It's awesome, and it's awesome to help people and change people's lives and get paid to do it. I mean, it doesn't get better than that, right? This Holy Spirit rocket ride, though, here's what it's about. And here's the phenomenal life opportunity that every one of you have, is to be a conduit for God's love and God's power. See, the idea of being a conduit for the most powerful force in the universe, you can be that conduit. Where you have the most powerful force in the universe that has to pass through you and impacts people around you. And it keeps impacting, and it keeps growing and growing. I mean, I don't know about you, but the idea of being the conduit for the most powerful force in the universe is pretty exciting to me. That's what the Holy Spirit rocket ride is about. But here's the challenge to make that a reality, is you have to sacrifice. You have to be willing to sacrifice of yourself. And you have to be willing to stay in God's lane. Now here's what I call God's lane. Here's the way I look at it. You know when you're on the freeway, you're driving down the freeway, you're in your lane, right? Now, we have a little wiggle room in our lane, right? We can move over a little bit to the left, we can move over a little bit to the right, but we don't have a lot of wiggle room, right? Well, that's the way God rolls. He's got a lane. And that lane is about one thing. It's about love, and love's about sacrifice. But you got to stay in that lane. But see, what does sacrifice mean? Does sacrifice mean to receive? No. It means to give of yourself. And as you sacrifice and you stay in this mode of giving unconditionally to people, where you're giving your love and you're sacrificing unconditionally, that's God's lane. You get into that, and then you will tap into that conduit of that kind of power. And what will start to happen in your life is so beyond what you ever imagined. Now, can I get someone to help me pass out these cards? Okay. These are cards, they're my faith cards. And I'm going to wrap up with this. Here's what the faith cards are about. I've turned the word faith into an acronym. The first letter is F. Here's what F represents, is focus. Now, our lives will move in the direction of what we think about. Like gravity, you will move in the direction of what you think about all day. So I want you to take an inventory of what are your thoughts all day. You know, Thomas Aquinas talks about, you know, the four vices of man as far as power, you know, pleasure, pride, and wealth. Odds are you're caught in one of those four areas. You know, pleasure is sex and porn and all that stuff. You know, the pride is just, you know, status. The power, you know, or just chasing the money. That was really my big vice, was chasing the money. But focus, get your focus. This is why I've learned that staying in prayer all day, every day is key. Because I'm going to tell you the simple truth. Without it, you're going to go out of your lane. You're going to leave God's lane if you don't stay in prayer. We're just not strong enough. Next, A. A is ambition. Have godly goals. All things are possible. What's possible for your life is so amazing. Don't limit your goals to just being safe. I is integrity. Be someone that people can trust. If people trust you, they're only going to trust you if you have integrity, where you do the right thing no matter what. If they trust you, then you have lots of friends and you have great relationships. T is for tenacity. Life is hard. If you're waiting for life to get easy, you need to get rid of that idea. Life doesn't get easy. It never gets easy. Life gets better, but it doesn't get easy. Do you see the difference? Life doesn't get easy. There's too many problems, too many areas. Whether it's money, your health, whatever. And lastly is humility. H is for humility. Is be humble. You know, our journey, our purpose, this is not about us. Give the glory to who deserves the glory. You know, every day I've become more and more aware of God's amazing depth of love. I'm going to tell you a couple of little things that occurred to me recently that I took for granted my whole life. One is roses and flowers. You know, my wife and I planted these roses. We have a statue in our backyard of Mary, and we planted these rose bushes behind. A couple years ago, and they gradually grew, and now they're up there. And then this spring, and they were just spectacular. And as I was looking at the beauty of these roses, I was just thinking, wow, they were like so beautiful. They were huge roses, smelled great, and they were beautiful. And then I asked the question, what is the purpose of a rose and its beauty? Why? Well, to me, there's only one logical reason of creating something of that level of beauty. Is that someone expressing their love for you? You know, and I'll give you another simple example, is just your taste buds. Do you need to have taste buds? You don't need to have taste buds. Why do you have taste buds? Why do things taste so good? I started analyzing that. Why do things taste so good, right? Somebody wants you to be happy. Somebody wants you to enjoy your food. There's all kinds of little things like this where God's saying, look, I'm bringing all these things and making your life amazing. And you take them all for granted. We just do. But that card and faith, if you can stay in God's lane, focus on love and through sacrifice for others, and you can stay in that lane, you can tap into being this conduit for the most powerful forces in the universe. And all things are possible for you in your life. Let me tell you about this little book. This is, to me, another great example of God's power. After I had the heart attack, which was 12 years ago, 49, I'm 61. July 31st of this month will be the 12-year anniversary. I had that heart attack because I was so stressed out. I've been working a lot of hours since I was 18, chasing, I call it the human condition of more, no matter what car I got, the next one, I couldn't wait till the next one, and just more and more, and it led to being stressed out and the heart attack. A couple years after that, after that I was praying a lot, and then I said, I need to understand life. I need to understand God at a deeper level. And so I started praying for wisdom. Every night I just started praying, I said, Lord, I need to understand better. I need more wisdom. I'm missing something here. I just need to understand more. And here's what started happening. And the Bible talks about this all through the Old Testament, the New Testament, is dreams. Here's what I learned, and the one book I have, How Heaven Works, is I started waking up in the morning, understanding things. It was all the time. I'd wake up in the morning and I understood something at a much deeper level. And so I started putting them on Facebook. I just started sharing things. And here's what happened over a period of about 2 years. I would share these revelations. I'd go to bed and I didn't understand something, and I wake up and all of a sudden I understood something. And then I would have people saying, say, Mark, that's really helpful. And then I started having them over and over saying, you should write a book. And after you get so many of those, I said, my daughter's a writer. So I said, Courtney, help me put this into a book. And so we just started collecting all these little things of wisdom that these aren't from me. That's the truth. These aren't from me. These are godly inspirations that I woke up and I just wrote them down and collected them. And in here, you'll see from what love is, an explanation of what love is, and you'll see all these little inspirational things of wisdom that, I just don't, it's, I was watching a movie the other day. My wife and I went to see this movie yesterday. Has anybody heard of this new movie that's out yesterday? Okay. Well, here's what the movie yesterday is about. You know the Beatles song Yesterday? Okay. I watched it. Now I love the Beatles music, right? You know what I'm talking about? Okay. So I watched the trailer, to this, and it's this Indian guy. And he's playing. The guy's got a great voice, and the music. I think this is great, man. If nothing else, I'm going to love hearing the music. So we went to watch this movie, and here's what the movie's about: is the guy is a rock and roll player in a band, and his band's going nowhere, and he's finally throwing the towel in. And one night, he's riding home on his bike. Lights go out, bus hits him, and he's on the side of the road, and now he's in bad shape. He's in the hospital. He's unconscious for a few days. He wakes up, he comes out of the hospital after a week, and then he's sitting at he celebrated his birthday with his friends. His girlfriend gives him a guitar, and it's a new guitar he starts playing yesterday. And his friends sitting there go, after when he gets done, they go, that's an amazing song. When did you write that? He goes, what are you talking about? Paul McCartney wrote that. And they go, who's Paul McCartney? You know Paul McCartney, you know the Beatles. Who are the Beatles? So now he's like kind of in this alter universe where the Beatles never existed. But he knows all the Beatles songs, right? So he's playing the songs, but the point is he becomes this like mega rock star, right? playing Beatles songs. You know, and Ed Sheeran is like blown away by him, going, God, you're a way better writer than I am. Right? So it's really funny, but it's a great story. But here's my point why I share it, is while I'm watching that movie, I can relate to it. The weight of his life, the weight of the lie he was living was starting to weigh on him, right? And because he was kind of, you know, I mean, it wasn't true, right? Anyway, and that's why I share with you. Here's where I can relate. These inspirations, the things that I'm sharing with you, these aren't coming from me. That's the truth. That's the truth. You know, I'm like that little Indian guy.